Good evening. I always enjoy this opportunity whenever I get to speak before you and bring a lesson to you. And I'm very glad that you are all here tonight. There's a lot of places you could be, but you chose to be here. So tonight, I was thinking about what I wanted to present the lesson on, and I started thinking about my daily routine. And at nighttime, whenever McKinley's going to bed, we read a bedtime story. And starting a while back, we started reading from this, the Beginner's Bible. If you have had any class here since you were a young kid, we've learned from this book. It's a Bible that breaks down Bible stories to a simple way for kids to understand them. And he has loved them. Every time we finish, he's asking for one more, whether it's the book or whether the fact that he doesn't want to go to sleep. I don't know, but I'm attributing it to the book. And we read these stories, and it's been so great for him because it really is impressive to see what he picks up. He's remembering these stories. We read the next one, and he can remember what was last night's, and it's very cool to see him learning these things. But it's also been quite beneficial for me. I've read stories again that I forgot about, the details that I didn't remember. And tonight, I want to talk about one of those. Tonight, we're going to talk about Gideon. And I apologize. I know last week we spent the entire week in the Old Testament, and I tried to go to the New Testament, but we haven't made it there yet. We just haven't made it there yet, so I couldn't pull anything from that. But I want to talk about Gideon. And if you turn with me to Judges 6 and 7, that's where the story of Gideon is based. Now, I don't have the time to read the entire account of Gideon. All right? Ethan said he has to make it to dinner, so I can't read all of that. But I want to quickly summarize the story of Gideon so that we have an understanding of what that story was. In chapter 6, verses 1 through 10, we see that the Israelites are being oppressed by the Midianites. And it's not good. The Israelites are in trouble. Then in verses 11 through 27, we see the call of Gideon. God realizes that he needs a faithful man to free his people from this oppression. So an angel goes to Gideon and calls him. But what we learn about Gideon is very impressive. In verse 12, he is called a mighty man of valor. Gideon is a warrior. He's a man who has valor, who has fought. But Gideon questions why he was chosen to free the Israelites. In verse 15, we find out that he comes from a poor family in Manasseh, and even inside of his family, he's the least of his father's children. So Gideon's like, why me? I'm not a great man. I'm not a man of stature. Why me? And we could do a whole lesson on how God uses people that are not great men, that are not these out-and-out amazing people to accomplish his work, but we won't tonight. Then in verses 36 through 40, Gideon requests 2 signs from God so that he can know assuredly that he is the chosen one to defeat the Midianites. Now that brings us to chapter 7. Chapter 7 is where we're going to look tonight. In chapter 7, we see the story of Gideon and his army defeating the Midianites. In verse 1, we see that Gideon has assembled a great army. He has nearly 30,000 men ready to go fight the Midianites. He has assembled a great army, and God comes to him and tells him, Gideon, this is too many men. Gideon's probably like, all right, God, okay. If we're going to go to war, I want a lot of people. So Gideon follows God's instructions in verse 3 and tells the men, if you're fearful, go home. Just doing that alone, he loses 20,000 men. Now he's down to 10,000 men. And Gideon, I'm assuming at this point, is like, all right, 30,000, 10,000. I can work with 10,000. We can still get this done. He's like, let's go. God again says, Gideon, this is too many men. Gideon at this point is going to be like, God, you sure? Like, the Midianites aren't a small foe. But okay, he follows the instructions again and has the men drink from the lake or from the river. And if they drink a specific way by cupping it and lapping it up, they remain. If they don't, they go home. So Gideon does this, and in verse 7 we see that this drops his total to 300 men. Gideon went from an army of 30,000 people to 1% of his army at 300 men. And God says, now it's time to go defeat the Midianites. And we know that Gideon wasn't 100% sure of that because God sends him into the camp to hear the Midianites speaking. But in verse 15, I want to read here. Here in chapter 7 of Judges, in verse 15, it says, And it was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof, that he worshipped, and returned to the host of Israel, and said, Arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hands the host of the Midians. Gideon goes from 30,000 men to 300 men, and he speaks with confidence. He speaks in the past tense. They haven't gone to battle yet. This war has not been fought. And he said, God hath delivered them. He is already confident. He knows the result after dropping to 300 men. And now, before that now we look in the rest of it, in chapter 7, 16 through 25, we see the conclusion, where Gideon and his men, they divide into 3 groups of 100. They surround the city, and on Gideon's command, they blow their trumpets, they light their torches, they smash the bottles, and what happens? The Midianites start fighting each other. They kill each other. With 300 men, Gideon pushes the Midianites back into retreat and frees the Israelites. And now you may be thinking, Connor, that is a really cool story. That shows the might of God, and you're right, because that is so cool that God defeated a great army with 300 men. But we need to know how this applies to us. These stories in the Old Testament are great, but if we can't apply them today, if we can't learn from them, they're just good stories. And so, like Gideon, we don't have a massive army, right? We don't have a massive army of people to fight whatever comes our way. But we face enemies just like the Midianites. We face great struggles. We face great struggles in our lives. But like Gideon, we have God. Because God was with Gideon, he was able to defeat the Midianites. And we too can defeat our struggles. Mark 10:27, Jesus speaking here, looks at them and it says, And Jesus looking unto them saith, With men it is impossible, but not with God. For with God all things are possible. With God we cannot be defeated. With God we can overcome any obstacle is in our way. But only when we, as Gideon did, put our full trust in God that he will deliver us. When we place our full trust in God, he will give us the ability, the power to overcome whatever is facing us. And like Gideon, we may doubt it. We may not know what God's full plan is, but you have to place your full trust in God and know he will deliver you. So tonight, I hope as we have quickly overviewed the story of Gideon, that you have gained as much from it as I have. That you are encouraged to go out and face whatever comes your way with God on your side. With the confidence of Gideon to say, I've already overcome this because God's on my side. So tonight, the only question remains. Will you be like the Israelites who didn't have faith in God and were subdued by the Midianites? Or will you be like Gideon? Will you be like Gideon, put your full faith in God and allow him to deliver you through whatever it is that you are struggling with? If you have any needs of the congregation, please come forward as we stand and sing.